Bret Baier joins us now on the phone. Bret, what is your reaction? Probably no surprise or shock, but nonetheless, what do you think?
Yeah, guys, I think this is not a surprise, but maybe the timing of it, coming today on Thanksgiving weekend Sunday, and how it's written up in this release by the White House. Obviously, you guys have already talked about how the White House has, for more than a year, said that he was not going to ever do this. You saw the David Muir interview with ABC where he said he was never going to pardon his son Hunter, no matter what. And we've seen different iterations from Karine Jean-Pierre from the White House press briefing room the same way. I think internally a lot of people thought by the end of this term he was probably going to do it anyway. And so in that sense, it's not a surprise. I think to your point, the timing of it is, it's going to be a lot of reaction on Capitol Hill. You're already seeing Congressman Comer and others say that it was a lie that President Biden said he wouldn't pardon him, and expect the focus from Republicans to be on this as they get ready for their own battles with nominations that President-elect Trump has put forward.
So, Bret, as we're getting ready to start watching some of these confirmation hearings in the Senate, does this amp up the partisanship, or does it temper it down, or does it have no impact whatsoever on what's already going to be pretty contentious hearings coming up?
No, I think it's going to amp it up, and I think that Republicans will use this as ammo against Democrats who are going after various nominees, and I think that there'll be a lot of pointing back to all that President Biden has said, that he wasn't going to do this, and here he is. And there'll be a lot of talk about lawfare and the use of that against President-elect Trump all throughout this time. There were some people in certain circles that said if Biden didn't pardon Hunter, that maybe when President Trump was inaugurated, that maybe he would, and that actually was being tossed around as a possibility. But obviously that's all to the wayside now, as President Biden has made this decision, and he's made it early, well before he leaves office on January 20th.
I was trying to remember, and I couldn't come to mind right away, the last time a family member, and I bet you have that's something you might have on the top of your head, the last time a family member had to be pardoned by a president.
I don't have that, and I
think I feel a little bit better about that.
Yeah. I mean, don't feel bad, because it's not on the top of my head, and I think we'll have to look back and see where exactly that might. I
mean, we've had some pretty good family members, but maybe not quite this level of family members. This brings it to a new level.
That's right. And listen, think about how much coverage we've had on the Hunter Biden saga and all elements of it. Not just the gun charge, which he goes into, President Biden, in this release pretty specifically about all of that, but then he doesn't talk a lot about the taxes, which also are covered in this 10-year going back to how far this goes back as far as a pardon goes, and perhaps those are more serious of the charges that we haven't really gotten to.
Well, in the federal tax evasion charges, he actually pled guilty to. The question is whether he would have really served time. That's something the president is saying would not be likely. But nonetheless, I mean, the federal tax evasion charges is a serious thing. So he gets away with all of it. And there's going to be no recourse. My question is, will there ever be answers to the many questions as to the president's knowledge of Hunter Biden's dealings, both internationally, the federal tax charges, all of it? How much did the president know? Will we ever know?
Listen, we've gone down this road and obviously confronted President Biden. Peter Doocy did it numerous times about whether he was on the speakerphone, whether he knew about the businesses, and there was always this denial. But much of what we saw that came out from that laptop, which obviously was confirmed to be accurate, suggested much more knowledge than he ever let on. I don't think that Republicans are going to spend a lot of time in committees after the inauguration going backwards to Biden. I could be wrong, but I think that they've got a lot of big things to do on the Trump agenda.
Bret, Lisa Booth here. I was going to ask a question a little bit further about that with the pardon being outside of the scope of just the tax charges and the gun charges specifically. Does this insulate Joe Biden from potentially some of those roads leading to him? I mean, we know that IRS agents, whistleblowers have stepped forward saying that they were previously thwarted from following those roads that could potentially get to Joe Biden. So does this sort of broad pardon insulate and protect Joe Biden? Maybe.
That's a great point. And, I think we'll have to look at that. I agree. It's pretty sweeping if you look at the entire pardon itself and how it's written. This is a unique thing in that it is the son of a president, but it is something that Republicans had been looking at for many months.
Absolutely.
President Biden, obviously, as you just brought up, had said that he was never going to pardon his son. Now he's being called out as a liar. He actually did say that he would respect the jury's outcome no matter what it is, and that he said that he would not pardon Hunter. That's back in June. Let's listen to that.
As we sit here in Normandy, your son Hunter is on trial, and I know that you cannot speak about an ongoing federal prosecution. But let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
I mean, did he have any choice to answer any differently there, Bret? I mean, honestly.
In the middle of an election,
no.
At that point, he's still running. I think probably that's how he was going to answer it. But, a little bit later, down the road, the White House briefing, the press corps had really asked Karine Jean-Pierre numerous ways, numerous times, including our own correspondents in the room, whether that was going to change 6 months down the road. And it was pretty definitive. It was really cut and dry. It was not going to happen, was never going to happen, is never going to happen. And I think, listen, I think people who looked at this politically thought it was going to happen, period, the end. Whether it was going to be President Biden in the final days, this is a little bit earlier than people expected.
I think he believed that a re-election would happen, and that's what he was banking on. And I believe that is the reason why he had to stick to that answer, because he actually didn't think that there was any chance that he would be booted out of office by former President Trump, or that Kamala Harris would in fact take his seat. I mean, things were very different if you think about it in June, because remember the month of July and what went down in July. That's when, Biden was out, Kamala Harris was in, she started campaigning. He would have never seen what was to come.
Well, and to that point, Julie, Bret, if you're Joe Biden, what do you have to lose at this point, right? Your party kicks you out, he drops out via X, he's not running for re-election. He's out. His reputation's tarnished. So is his administration. So at this point, Bret, what does he have to lose?
No, and there's not a lot of political downside for this move for Democrats. Again, I think on Capitol Hill, people expected this. And so it's kind of baked in the cake as far as the politics. We'll hear about the sound and fury for a couple of days, I think, in reaction. And it may, in fact, take some of the oxygen out of the room for some of the focus on some of the president-elect's nominees. But get ready, because once we get to January 6th and that process starts, it'll be full court press when it comes to politics.
So, Bret, I knew that there was a bell ringing in the back of my mind. It was Bill Clinton, in fact, who pardoned his half-brother Roger on cocaine charges. So
there you go.
I knew it was sometime in our lifetime, but I couldn't remember which one.
Did we ever find out who brought cocaine to the White House?
Yeah,
Bret, have you gotten to the bottom of that?
Maybe now we can uncover that one.
Yeah,
but I wonder if this frees up Hunter to now, go into the pardon business. This is what Roger Clinton was doing, running around lobbying for pardons and collecting cash in the process. But I think, what Bret just said, we're moving on. That's what Shannon said, that the news cycle, it keeps moving on. So this happened on a Sunday. My take is that if I were a Democrat, I would not be happy about this, because they want to be talking about the president's appointments. They don't want to be talking about this kind of thing. So is this another example of Joe Biden not playing ball with the Democrats. During the campaign, he seemed to be kind of going off on his own, and people said, you know what? It's maybe because they took him out. He wasn't happy with Nancy Pelosi. He wasn't happy with Kamala and the other Democrats. So was this Joe Biden going rogue? Do you think he talked to Democrats about this? Or Bret, is this a surprise to people like Nancy Pelosi?
I think it's pretty it was pretty known that it was going to happen, I think. Not that he had any advance briefing of the Democrats before this comes out, but I think that there was a sense that President Biden was going to do this. And it'll be interesting to see the TikTok of who he told this was going to happen. Listen, this is a Sunday night, again, at the end of a holiday weekend. And, this comes up ahead of probably a busy news week as we get ready to full court press towards January.
Bret, what do you think the next White House press secretary briefing is going to look like? I would assume that Karine Jean-Pierre has some explaining to do.
Yeah, I think that there'll be some tough questions, and there'll be a lot of quoting back to what they've asked her before. And she'll have to say this was the president's decision. And I bet we will go back to that briefing book many times about how to read that the right way.
I assume as much.
It is kind of interesting, though, that, talking about what you're saying, Tom, where it is off script for them. They want to be talking about how outrageous these nominees are and what does Joe Biden do, but he steps in and he says, oh, yeah, not only am I going to change the subject away from how outrageous some of these nominees are, but I agree with Donald Trump that the DOJ has been weaponized.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I've been bombarded, Charlie, since our conversation with all of these experts about President Clinton issuing this pardon for his half-brother, Roger Clinton, after he served a year in prison for pleading guilty to cocaine distribution charges. So thank God you went back to that fact.
Yeah, I have too. I just didn't want to.
My phone was blowing up.
I didn't want to give any of them the satisfaction of realizing that they actually did remind me.
Although, you know what's so fitting? Joe Biden leaving office with another massive whopper. Right? Like, that's just so fitting for Joe Biden, someone who's told every lie under the sun throughout his entire political career, going out with this massive lie, having previously said, I'm not going to pardon Hunter Biden. And now that is exactly what he's doing.
I don't think anybody. Go ahead, Bret.
The
what were you saying?
The Clinton pardon was one of 140 that Clinton issued on his last day in office, and the only presidential family pardon up until this point today for Hunter Biden. So if it's 140, we could have a lot of pardons yet to come.
Well, that's it. It's a missed opportunity because you could issue 140 if you were Joe Biden, and we wouldn't be talking about 139 of them. Now we're going to be scrutinizing all of his pardons going forward. My take would be do it on the way out the door. Hunter Biden is going to be the only news, and then anybody else is going to go under the radar. Am I right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. But Bret, what you mentioned earlier is that, this incoming administration has a lot of work that they want to get done, and they're not going to really bother with Biden and his dealings and getting answers from President Biden, which is an interesting point considering when the Biden administration took over, they basically spent the last 4 years hammering Trump, trying to bring him up on criminal charges, invading his home in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they did not give up. They did not let up. You're saying the Republicans are going to take the higher road and they're going to actually focus on getting things done.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of the Trump agenda that they want to push forward, and there's a lot of moving parts to try to do that. I mean, first and foremost is getting all the people he wants into their positions. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any retrospective look back, especially when it comes to the FBI and the DOJ in particular, and maybe looking into who knew what when about how all of that went down. But as far as relitigating Hunter Biden and the ties to President Biden, I'm not sure they're going to spend that much time going down that road.
Do you think this influences the Senate confirmation hearings whatsoever when it comes to Kash Patel? Just out of curiosity.
That's a great question. I think in recent days there have been more supporters of Kash Patel who've come out, and our own Trey Gowdy has spoken highly of Kash Patel, and others have come out and said that they think he can be a change agent. So I would expect the thing to turn on some of the media stories that you've seen of the people that are supporting him. So does this affect that? I don't know. It does take some of the oxygen for a couple of days where this will be the focus.
But see, can you put me down? I don't know if I want to take the higher road on this because because this all speaks to the weaponization of government, which gets to why Kash Patel was nominated in the first place for the FBI with the Department of Justice with accusations that Merrick Garland inserted himself in the process to protect Hunter Biden, right? That is an unequal application of the law, which we have seen consistently throughout the Biden administration and all of this, the weaponization directed at Donald Trump while Hunter Biden continues to, one, get a pardon, to get a sweetheart deal, to, not have the Burisma money being held against him and being part of those tax charges as well. So, I don't know if I want to take the higher road, Charlie.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. But I also think that, Donald Trump has, his view of this election is that it's a starting point. And he has big things that he wants to get done. And I think that in as much as he can use all of this as a cudgel to crack open DOJ and the FBI and get things done there, I think he will I think a lot of his supporters in Congress will go after that. But I think that they have really big other fish to fry that are more policy oriented, and they're going to be off to the races on that stuff.
But you can do both. And then also, but also one of those big policy initiatives is reforming, taking a look at the Department of Justice, reforming the FBI. And so I do think that this goes hand in hand with those goals that you just laid out, the big ambitions of Donald Trump for this next administration as well.
Should we let Bret get back to his cold turkey sandwiches?
Bret, do you want to keep hanging out with us?
No, he's going to get off.
I'm going to run, but I'll leave you with this.
Yeah,
this
please
is
do.
really sweeping, and it is sweeping. So it's not only for the guns and the gun and taxes convictions, but it also really amounts to any crime he might have committed in the last decade. So if you do have a Congress that looks back or was going down a different road, this is pretty broad and sweeping, and we're going to hear a lot about it from Capitol Hill starting tomorrow.
Bret Baier, thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday. Get back to your life, and I know what the lead will be on your show tomorrow. I would imagine you'll be talking about this just a bit on the special report.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you, Bret.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.